Hello, friends. So crafting. It's one of those things that scares a lot of people off in the game. It is a very complicated thing in the game, but you can get going right away. And I would argue that everyone who has played the game of Path of Exile has crafted in some fashion. If you've even just used a transmute once, you have technically crafted. And this is intended as a guide to get people that are on the fence about getting into crafting in general, or people who are intermediate and want to get to the next level, just help them see how approachable crafting really is and how scary it is not. So let's just get into it. All right, so what is crafting? Well, it's the process of changing some sort of item into another type of item, usually with a goal of improving it. You can even purposely make an item worse if you want to in this game. The world is your oyster. It is really just a process of using currency or different tools that are available to us to modify an item and turn it into something else. That's really all that is encompassed in crafting. So that's why I said if you've used a single transmute or an aug or an alteration or even the chromatic orb or anything, you have technically crafted. There's just a lot of steps beyond that and a lot of strategies that you can use to make more advanced items. And I just we're going to start from the beginning and we're going to go real basic. And then later on, we'll get into more specific things. Basic currency, items, changing them, what all is it? So this is kind of the foundation of all of Path of Exile is the currency, what we use to trade, that effectively has value for buying things from people on the trade website. Their value is locked to what they can do in terms of making an item powerful for other characters. So, what these items can do to what these currency items can do to an item is kind of that is what defines the entire economy of the game, what defines the whole way that players interact with items and they look at their power curves over time and all of that. What is an item? Well, from the most basic definition, and there's, due to Path of Exile being very complicated, there's exceptions. But if we just look at a standard item that can be equipped by a character in our main equipment slots, there's exceptions with like flasks or jewels or whatever. We have this base item. An item can be white, normal. It can be blue, which is magic, or it can be yellow, which is rare. What all of that means is white means it can have no modifiers. Blue means it can have one prefix and one suffix. And yellow, rare, means that it can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. What are those? Well, I'm going to cheat and go ahead a little bit. So if we have this yellow item, if we hold Alt, and you'll want to go to the UI setting here and turn on advanced mod descriptions. This under UI, you want to turn on advanced mod descriptions. This lets us see even more detail when we hold Alt. Like we can see the range of the values here. You'll actually see what is a prefix and what is a suffix. When I hold Alt on this item, you'll see prefixes. There's 3 prefixes right now, and there's 1 suffix. That means that this item is full on prefixes. It has no more room. And suffixes, it actually has room for 2 more. And that's like the base concept of what an item is. It is the base item. So we have our base white item. It has these base stats: physical damage, critical strike chance, attacks per second. As we hold Alt, we see it is item level 13, which I'll get into. It requires level 6 and 29 intelligence to equip. It also has an implicit. Implicits kind of live separately from the prefixes and the suffixes. That is just something that usually comes from the base type of an item, but there's ways in the game to change what an implicit is. What does the currency do, and how do we craft? As you mouse over these, you see what each item does. Transmute upgrades a normal item to a magic item. That specifically means that, as I said before, it makes a white item into a blue item. It now gives it the ability to have 1 prefix and 1 suffix by becoming a blue magic item. We see that it has 1 suffix. So by using a transmute, also all of these things that change the state, it will also roll it randomly to give it some modifiers that fit within the buckets that are available, 1 prefix, 1 suffix for blue, or 3 and 3 for yellow. Now, the next step on top of that would be an orb of augmentation. Augments a magic item with a new random modifier. What that means is if it has an open prefix or an open suffix, we can fill that using the orb of augmentation. So we know that there's already a suffix on here. If we use an orb of augmentation, it now will fill a prefix because we had a full suffix. No matter what, it has to be a prefix. And then there's the orb of alteration, which will reforge. What reforge means is keep the state of the item, blue, yellow, what have you, but just do a full reroll of what's on there. There's nothing additional to that. It's just do a full reroll, give me a new item or just give me all new prefixes and suffixes on that item. And you're not guaranteed to have full prefixes and suffixes. As you'll see, sometimes we'll get 1 prefix, 1 suffix, or both filled. It's just random. So we got 1 suffix, and then we can aug it again, and then we get a prefix. And then sometimes, as we're rolling, we'll get a prefix and a suffix. Now, the interesting thing you can do when looking at magic items is you actually see the title of it, Adept's Goat Horn of the Whelpling. So what this is, so it's a goat's horn, right? And now when we have our modifiers on it, we actually see that the name of the prefix is smoldering. The name of the suffix is embers. So the name of the item is the smoldering goat's horn of embers. This can be very, very useful for when you're rolling and you're looking for the name of a specific modifier. You can just be reading the top and just see, like, I'm looking for smoldering, and you can just keep rolling until you see that name of the item. That is all of the interactions for blue items, is transmute, aug, and alteration. Now, these are how you modify. You go from white to blue with a transmute. You can go from a single modifier blue to a 2 modifier blue with an aug, and an alteration will will just do a full reforge. Now, a regal orb has a very specific purpose where it changes a magic item to a rare item. As we said before, a rare item means it can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. What a regal orb does is it will take a blue item, either 1 or 2 modifiers, and make it a rare item, and it will add 1 random prefix or suffix to it. So no matter what, we're going to get if we start from a 2 modifier, we will always go to a 3 modifier with a regal. This can be used for specifically targeting certain things. It's also, if you want to finish crafting an item, you usually want 3 prefixes and suffixes. You can use a regal orb to continue working on your item when you get the 2 modifiers that you want, 1 or 2 as the blue item, and then you upgrade it to yellow, and then you keep going down the line. So what a regal orb does, it will add a new modifier. Because now there can be up to 6 modifiers, they just give it like a randomly generated name from a dictionary. So instead of being called the smoldering goat's horn of embers and of the student, it just has the name Sorrow Chant, and that is just randomly rolled. We'll see that it added a suffix, which is the tier 8 intelligence. It is now a yellow item, which means it can have up to 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. I also mentioned tiers. So modifiers within a certain range. So we see tier 8 adds fire damage to spells. What that means is tier 8, like tier 10, I think is about as low as it goes. Tier 1 is the best. And the tiers that we can get are based on the base item that we're working with. We'll get into that in a little bit. These are low tier modifiers, but we created an item. Now, you've seen me use this already a couple times in the past. What a scouring orb does is it will remove all modifiers that it can from an item. So there are things that can block it, and there's very specific tricks that we'll get into later. But for all intents and purposes, for normal usage, a scouring orb will turn an item back to white. This will remove all the modifiers. So if something bad happens, like if your regal orb hits a modifier that you really, really don't want, and you just want to start from scratch again, that's what a scouring orb does. So this is our eraser. This is our clean slate. So conversely, from using using orbs of transmutation, alteration, rolling up a blue item and going up to a yellow item, we can just go directly to a yellow item and start crafting from there. So that's what an orb of alchemy does. So this will just go directly to a full randomly rolled yellow item. It will have between, I think it can have 3 modifiers, between 3 and 6 modifiers. And they're just all fully randomly rolled. As a little bonus, you can use an orb of binding, which will re-roll the sockets. It will give you 3 linked sockets on a normal item, on a small weapon, And then larger items, it will go up to 4 link sockets. For all intents and purposes, otherwise, an Orb of Binding is identical to Orb of Alchemy. You can use it on maps, you can use it on anything, but do be careful. Don't use an Orb of Binding on a 6-linked item. You will break the links. It is very sad. So be careful about that. Also, Orb of Alchemy is generally valued more anyway, because this can be used in certain recipes. A Chaos Orb, which it's effectively what a dollar bill is in this game. This is the standard currency that we use for trading, but what a lot of people don't really do when they think about it, a lot of newer players, is, yeah, it's $1, but it also does something. Like, it's $1 because it does something. That's the economy is based on what an item can do to another item. So, or what currency can do for crafting items. So a Chaos Orb, it does the exact same thing as an Orb of Alteration, but for yellow items. So as an Orb of Alteration, we'll just keep reforging and give you random blue modifiers. An Orb of Chaos will just re-roll an item entirely and give you any modifiers on a yellow item. This can be, so we call that chaos spamming. If you want to just like you're just looking for like 1 or 2 different modifiers, you can just keep throwing chaos at something until you hit something that looks decent. Chaos, especially in something like Solo Self-Found, is actually a very, very useful currency for just getting a basic item that you can use. Kind of don't want to do this because these are expensive. So there's the Exalted Orb. So an Exalted Orb is the exact same thing as an augmentation, but for a yellow item. So as an augmentation, let me scour this. So as we saw, if we get to a single modifier as a blue item, an Orb of Augmentation added 1 more modifier up to fill up the bucket. You know, we had 1 prefix or 1 suffix. It fills the other one. Now, so if we wanted to go through all the steps, we can transmute, we can Orb of Augment, then we can Alteration to re-roll what we have here. We're like, oh, we really like chaos damage over time. That's cool. Let's regal it to make it yellow and see if we can keep working on the item. Okay, we hit increased spell damage. Cool, we like that. Now, if we want to complete the item, like as for like full basic crafting, only using simple currency, we can use an Exalted Orb, which is worth about 100 to 150 chaos. So it on standardly in a league, like by default. And that just totally, that varies throughout the course of the league, varies league to league. I've seen an Exalted Orb worth between 20 up to almost 200 chaos, depending on the league and everything. And that's because the way the economy works, as I said earlier, is it's based on how useful that currency is for crafting good items. And for some leagues, you're crafting, you know, entirely with a mechanic outside of basic currency, like Harvest or something like that. And in other leagues, Exalted Orbs are the main way that you're crafting. And if you're doing that, then Exalted Orbs could be worth a lot more. So what an Exalted Orb does is we see that we have 2 prefixes and 1 suffix. Let's actually just roll this until we have 3 of one of them, just so I can show. So here we go. This is very cool. So we have 3 prefixes and 2 suffixes. Now, because of that, we know that there's only room for 1 suffix. By using an Exalted Orb on this, it's called slamming. You will slam an Exalted Orb on this item, and you will guaranteed fill the last suffix. So for reference, this is me spending a fair amount of currency to make a demonstration in a video. So we're going to fill the suffix on this goat's horn. And boom, we hit increased lightning damage. So, you know, if you want to finish an item and just using basic currency, that is exactly what you use the Exalted Orb for. You know, so because Exalted Orbs are so rare, like best case, like a very strong farmer will see just a few Exalted Orbs a day, like someone that's going really, really hard. Hesitate to use the word average, but you know, a player that is just mapping normally they'll see maybe an Exalted Orb every couple days. You know, it varies for league to league and all that, but it is not a super common item. So, you know, you want to be very sure that you're using your Exalted Orb in a useful way. However, you know, most people don't even ever use Exalted Orbs. They just trade them because they're worth so much money for selling for other things, and that's okay. But you know, just know that they have intrinsic value when you're crafting. And it's something, if you want to craft bigger tier items, they're very valuable. I was mentioning the implicit before. So that lives entirely outside of the prefixes and suffixes that we're looking at. That is the increased spell damage line at the top. That is just an intrinsic to the goat's horn. It's the implicit modifier that comes with it, and it's within the range of 10. We can see it's in the range from 10 to 14. What that does, so we can use the Blessed Orb, which is not worth very much. The Blessed Orb will re-roll, so it says randomizes the numeric values of the implicit modifiers. So what that means is it will just randomize from 10 to 14. This usually doesn't cost very much, so we can just use them until we hit the 14%, and then we're happy. So we can see that there's ranges on all of our modifiers here. So 1 to 3 on our fire damage, where perfectly would be 2 to 4, etc. down the line. The Divine Orb, which is worth about 15 chaos, this does the exact same thing for the explicit modifiers. Those are the 6 below the implicit. So we can use the Divines, and you'll see that it just randomizes the value of all of those 6 modifiers. And you can use multiple Divines to try to get as high rolls as possible on that. The the final thing that you can do, actually, we'll do the sockets first. The Vol Orb is the final big fun thing. There's also quality and socket currency. It changes the quality of an item. So if we use a blacksmith whetstone, improves the quality of a weapon. What that does is, if you look at the physical damage at the top, that will go up as I add quality to an item. An item will have 0 to 20% quality by base, and then there's ways to improve to get that higher. So you can see that the physical damage, and that's the only thing that's changing as I improve the quality and use the whetstones. Because what quality does is it actually just modifies the base damage of a weapon or the base defensive characteristics of armor. It really doesn't do anything else when used on basic items. And there's other things that quality can do later on, but that's what it does by default. On a white item, a quality improvement will give you 5% at a time. On a blue item, I believe it's 2%, and a yellow item will be 1% at a time. So it will take 20 blacksmith whetstones to improve a yellow item, and only 4 to improve a white item. So if you want to quality something up, you do it when it's white before you start crafting, if you can. And now you'll see that there's sockets on an item. You can actually re-roll the number of sockets on an item by using a jeweler's orb, and the chance of hitting the perfect number, which is 3 on this weapon, is higher if you have high quality on the item. And then you can re-roll the links on an item, and links are for getting your gems to interact with each other. That's outside of the scope of this video, but the higher the quality on the item, the easier it is to hit the links that you want. So because this is a 20% item, the chance of me hitting 3 links on a fusing orb is just very high. So fusing jeweler will change the number of sockets, fusing will change the links between the sockets, and a chromatic orb will actually change the color of the sockets. And the color of the socket is determined, the chance of getting a color of the socket is determined by that requires intelligence line at the second to last line at the bottom there. That is the higher that those values, intelligence is blue, dexterity is green, and strength is red. The higher those values, the more likely it is to hit that color when you're using a chromatic orb. So there's a lot of tricks that you can do to reduce that number to make it easier to hit the colors that you want. And there's a lot of tricks for recoloring things. The last basic currency here, I'll show these in a second. Actually, the ancient orbs, these live outside the scope of this video. So the last basic currency here that I can show is the Vol Orb. A Vol Orb will corrupt an item, modifying it unpredictably. Unpredictably is not entirely accurate. It's no more or less RNG than anything else we've already done. What it will do is it corrupts an item. A corrupted item, for all intents and purposes, cannot be changed, with some exceptions. You can change the colors and links of an item, but that's about it. It will corrupt an item, which will give it the red line corrupted at the bottom, and it means you basically can't change the item ever again, and it will do one of a few things. So if the number one thing that you're looking for when you use a Vol Orb on an item is it actually has a chance to change the implicit modifier on an item. So if we have a really nice wand that has increased spell damage, maybe we don't want increased spell damage. Maybe we want a different implicit, like increased attack damage or something, if we have like an attack wand. So this is a risky thing. I think there's a 25% chance of changing the implicit, but then there's also like a 25% chance of nothing happening and a 25% chance of it, if it like bricking the item, like re-rolling it entirely, something along those lines. So it's a risky maneuver, but it's like a fun thing that you can do to take a really high tier item and push it into the next level. So if we, craft up our item and so we say, oh, this item's really, really good, but I hate the implicit, and I want to risk my item and make it super, super crazy good, I can use a Vol Orb on it and corrupt it. And look, we actually exactly what I was talking about just happened. We corrupted the item. The explicit modifiers did not change, but the implicit modifier changed to increased attack speed. This is, if we were making an attack wand, this could actually be really, really good for us. However, now we can no longer modify the item. See, target is corrupted. So, you have to make sure that the item is what you want. And you have a decent chance of bricking the item and making it unusable because it can actually re-roll it and turn it into something totally different. So a Vol Orb is a thing to be used with caution and care. that is a thing you can do for fun, a gamble later on down the road, but it tends to be a more advanced strategy. So when I first recorded this, I actually was missing the Orb of Annulment and Orb of Chance. So what an Orb of Annulment does is it removes a random modifier from an item. If we have a modifier on the item and we annul it, the modifier is gone. The interesting thing about the Orb of Annulment is it does not change it from blue to white or white to blue by, hitting that level of the bucket. So it is still a blue item with 0 modifiers now. You can use this to your advantage for some advanced crafting techniques. It's a good thing to know. It just removes any random modifier for an item. We call that the YOLO annul because it's just, say we really want to remove this global accuracy, but we want to keep the other 3 modifiers. We have a 25% chance of removing the thing we want to remove and a 75% chance of hitting something we do not want to remove. And so we just close our eyes and we hope we remove the accuracy. And then we open one eye and dang, we did not remove the accuracy. We removed the modifier that we like, and now the item is bricked. And so now we just scour and we start again or whatever. That's what the Orb of Annulment does. There's also the Orb of Chance, which just upgrades a normal item to a random rarity, including unique. As you may know, there are unique items in the game that are just, they do special things. They have a set explicits and sometimes implicits, I think. I'm not sure. But definitely the explicits on unique items are totally set, and they can have unique ones that don't show up anywhere else in the game. You can use Orb of Chances to try to randomly, and it's very rare. I think I've made like 2 uniques ever in 5 years of playing PoE using Chance Orbs. Using an Orb of Chance, it will just turn it into either normal, rare, or unique. And so if you want to like try to chance and get a special unique item, you can do that. Or you can use a chance item where like if you get like a really nice base, like a 4-link base as you're leveling an axe, you can use an Orb of Chance and just hope that you make it yellow with good modifiers. At the least, it's like no matter what, it goes to at least blue. So you can turn a white item into something that has a couple modifiers. It's either the same thing as a transmute, an alchemy, or a special turning into unique. And then this is what someone will do to like try to make a unique item. You'll see that it will be blue or the 3rd time in 5 years of playing Path of Exile, I just made a unique item. So you'll see that I just made a unique item with a Chance Orb. Wow, that's crazy. And then once it's a unique item, everything is really set and you can no longer scour it. Uniques are just set as uniques. So there we go. We just made a Storm Prison. That's very cool. That's pretty cool. All right. So we know what basic currency is and what it does. Now, what about the actual item? Crafting it's about the interaction between the item that you're working on and the currency or tools that you're using. The actual item is it's just as important, obviously, as the currency that we're using. So what is this item? So I went to Act 1. I just bought a simple carved wand here. What is it? So it is a wand that, this is the thing about Path of Exile. Every single word matters. So here's the thing. If I hit Control C I hit Control C on this wand, I can open up Notepad, and if I Control V it, this is what the item is. This is a thing built into Path of Exile. It's no external tool. And this is the stuff that Path of Exile sees when it's looking at an item. Like, you know, there's some like window dressing with some graphics here, but this is what an item is to Path of Exile. So what is this? It's in the item class wands. What does that mean? It means, so also, here's our first little introduction to Craft of Exile. This will be your best friend when you're crafting. I will not be able to go into enough detail about how to use Craft of Exile. I'm only going to use the really, really basic things in this video. You know, a comprehensive Craft of Exile tutorial will be very useful. I would like to work on one, but the developer actually keeps adding new features faster than I could make a video at this point. So I'll do my best in the future. But anyway, so we have a wand here, and this is all of the things that can go on a wand. Now, what else is part of the wand? It is a normal rarity. So we know that it cannot have any explicit modifiers right now. And then it is a carved wand. What a carved wand means is that it has a specific implicit. So if we click on carved wand, it means that it has the implicit of 11 to 15% spell damage, and it has that amount of crit chance, attacks per second, and the level and intelligence requirement. All of the stuff that we see here comes along with being a carved wand necessarily. And then in addition to that, so all of these things kind of come together. As well as this. So like this is all the stuff that comes by being a carved wand and by being item level 13. We'll talk about item level in just a second. It has these attributes. Item level. In just a second. Well, here was the second. So item level. Item level, this is one of the most important things about crafting. What item level means is it determines the pool of modifiers that can go into the bucket of the item. So if you imagine a pool of like all of these potential prefixes and suffixes, and the size of the pool is based on the item level and the base item of what the base of what that item is, and then you just have this bucket of 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes that you can like scoop your prefixes and modifiers out of that pool for, then that's basically the way that crafting works. So, you know, a little visual demonstration here. This is an item level 10 pool here, and then here's like all the little modifiers that are in it, all the prefixes and suffixes. If it's an item level 20 pool, so item level 20, it will have all of these prefixes and suffixes in it. And generally, these are higher level. I mean, they're necessarily higher level prefixes and suffixes. So in the item level 10 pool, for example, let's say you can only get that tier 8 fire damage. You can only get the tier 8 fire damage there. In the item level 20 pool, you can actually get tier 6 to tier 7 fire damage. Tier 6 to tier 7 fire damage is going to be higher numbers. If you want to get those higher level, but notice that the item level 20 pool is also surrounding the item level 10 pool. So you're not blocking the tier 8 fire damage, you're just adding 6 and 7 to the pool. And so as you're going to higher item level and you're trying to get specific higher tier modifiers, you are now opening yourself up to a wider range of modifiers. So it's just necessarily harder to hit what you're going for. And then, you know, when you have our little bucket here that can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. And then we, you know, whenever we're rolling the item, you know, we're using our alterations, we're using our chaos orbs, whatever, it will just, you know, it'll randomly pick modifiers from the available pool for that item level. So if it's just an item level 10, it only comes out of the item level 10 pool. And that's what can go in the bucket. So this is just like the very, very basics. So, you know, I'm using a chaos orb, I'm using an orb of alteration. It will choose from the available modifiers on the pool and just do a random roll and pull them out. So what are those modifiers? What are the random rolls? How does it work? So if we choose the item level of the item right here, so we are looking at an item level 13 item. So if we choose item level 13 here, we'll actually see, so that by default, the website is showing all item level, like a max item level, all of the modifiers. If we choose item level 13, we actually see it knocking out all of the things that are just no longer valid. And if I open these up, look, it's knocking out all of the higher tier modifiers. This can actually be very useful if you're looking for a very specific thing, like, look, plus level to all lightning spell skill gems. This is actually only item level 2. So if you just want these types of modifiers, getting the lowest item level, if you can get an item level 2 wand, if you could get that, you could just, get plus to cold, fire, and lightning if you want. It does that all at the same time very, very easily, because nothing else can show up in the prefixes. However, you generally don't want to do that. that's a fun strategy for early on. But if you want to get like these high level spell damage rolls or anything like that, you need a higher item level wand, and then it opens up the pool of everything here. However, obviously, this makes it much harder to hit what you're going for. Now, how do you know what you're going to get, and what are you likely to get? So that's what this weight column means. So we can see that in the prefixes, there's a total weight of 86,536. And then each modifier by itself has its own specific weight. So what you can imagine is there's a die roll from 1 to 86,536, and these are all just lined up in order. And when it lands on that number, it lands on, like 14,632, then maybe that's going to hit you like tier 7 max mana, right? If you have no other additional crafting strategies where you're going for these certain tags like caster or whatever, which is more advanced, you'll just get a random thing. If you're using like alteration or a chaos orb, a random thing from within here, and you'll see like the larger the range, right? So if it rolls from 1 to 1,887, you're going to hit cold damage. If you roll from 1888 to that plus 1800, you'll get one of the increased elemental damage with the attack skills modifier, and then so on and so on. And then that is the basic way that item level affects the modifiers that you get. What else do we have? Sockets, and then that's it. So this is your very basic introduction to what item level means and how you're going to get different modifiers within that as you're rolling. In addition to that, you'll see that there's these numbers on the right side here. These are modifier groups. What a modifier group means is if it already hits, say, increased cold damage, it's in modifier group 1. You can only have one mod of modifier group 1. And so what that means is for example, if you're using your Regal Orb to add one more modifier to your wand, and you already have the increased cold damage prefix, that means you cannot roll an increased fire or increased lightning damage or increased spell damage. They're all in mod group 1. So that means your Regal Orb actually has these blocked out because you can only have one modifier within that mod group. And that is a very basic explanation of the strategy for making sure that you don't hit certain modifiers. All right, so hopefully that was a good enough explanation of basic currency, what a basic item is, in a way that you can look up what the modifiers that are available on that item are based on its item level. Now let's look at our first thing that you can do in the game that does not use basic currency to craft. Well, basic currency fuels it, but it does not, you don't directly use basic currency, and that is the crafting bench. So what the crafting bench does is it allows you to add 1, or in a special circumstance, up to 3, crafted modifiers onto an item. So you'll see that I have all of these modifiers that are unlocked that I can craft onto an item. So if we take this white item, there's one special interaction in the crafting bench, is a white item, if you craft on it, will automatically become a blue item. So there's no restriction there. It basically works like a transmute. But you'll see that I have all of these modifiers here, and on this white item, I can craft this modifier onto this item, and that you'll see that it's actually like a light blue instead of the dark blue. And what that means is that's a crafted modifier. If I hold Alt, it says master crafted prefix. That's kind of a leftover from old school Path of Exile, where master crafted meant something. That just means it is a bench crafted item. So that's a bench crafted modifier that you can put on your item, and it follows all of the standard rules of the crafting. So if we have an item that has one open prefix and one open suffix, so I can aug this, and I know that it's going to become the suffix. Like that's the only available slot on the modifier. It is just a crafted mod. Crafted modifiers have their own mod groups and everything that are shared with the prefixes and suffixes. As I showed earlier, we can craft everything normally on top of this item in addition to it. So you can craft anything that you want onto it. The most common thing that you'll do early on is when you're leveling through the axe, you can use this to very quickly craft resistances onto your items. So if you're very low resistances and you're not capped, you can take any of your items that may have an open suffix. All resistances are suffixes. So we actually don't have an open suffix on here. Our suffix is full. We can regal this, and now since it is yellow, it now has room for 2 more suffixes. We can craft a resistance on here. You'll see that it also costs a scour to craft resistance on here. And then you'll also see that it removed the prefix that I had crafted. It did that by automatically doing remove crafted modifiers. And then, and it is clever enough for us to add that onto the scouring orb. So if we remove crafted mods, and then we want to add like fire res, you'll see that the scouring orb doesn't cost there anymore. And you'll see that this is the cost that it will take to do that craft. And some of them expensive. There are some advanced crafts that cost up to 2 exalts at a time. You may end up doing multiple of these at a time to do advanced crafting. It can just bench crafting can get very, very expensive. But the most common thing that you'll do early on, if you're in like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and you're trying to cap out your res, just come to your hideout, go to your crafting bench, and just, for 1 transmute, you can just toss on some resistance, and you can cap out your res and make your leveling experience much easier. And many people already do that, and they don't consider themselves crafters. But that's really like entry level, beginning, very beginning. This is technically crafting, and it is the exact same tool that we're using, where I do, can't have 3 crafted modifiers, suffixes cannot be changed, prefixes cannot be changed. Doing the advanced metacrafting stuff, it's all the same tool in the crafting bench, and it's stuff that's available to you. Once you do that, you're a crafter now. You're crafting. It's really just about that, getting that game knowledge and getting to the next level. That's really all there is for the basic tools that we have in our crafting bench. As I said, it follows all of the guidelines that I said earlier, where only 1 prefix, 1 suffix on magic, and 3 and 3 on a rare item. However, it also this is a thing where you may have run into this and you didn't know. If I want to craft spell damage, it says this item already has a mod of this type. What that is the mod groups that I was talking about earlier. If I look at spell damage, it's in mod group 1, and then if I mouse over this, there's so many mods in mod group 1. If you look all the way down, there is the little hammer and piece of paper icon, and that means it's a crafted modifier. And we'll see that all of these modifiers are in the same mod group as the spell damage, and so we are not able to craft the modifiers that are in here. Like same with like fire damage, they're all in mod group 1. This is not information that you see in the game. That's what thank the developer of Craft of Exile for creating this wonderful tool that helps us see exactly why these things are blocked and how. And that's a way that you can see like, oh, it's the spell damage that's blocked. So the first non-basic currency style crafting that we're going to go over is essence crafting. It took me a long time to really understand the power of essence crafting. I don't think it was until Harvest League that I really got into it. And a lot of that was I didn't really understand crafting very well until Harvest. While there was crazy power creep and there's been a lot of changes, Harvest League was really, really good for, I think, bringing at least me and a lot of my friends, bringing us into understanding what crafting was and all that it can do in the game. So what essence crafting does is it will re-roll an item. So the higher tier essences can just they're the same as a chaos orb. They can just reforge a rare item, so you can just spam them. But the lower level ones will upgrade a normal item to a rare one with a guaranteed property. So that's what all essences do. is they will, when you use it on an item, it's basically the same as an alchemy or a chaos orb. So it'll randomly roll a bunch of things on it, but there will be one modifier that is locked in and guaranteed. And essence tier modifiers are generally higher than the modifiers that you can normally get. And so essence modifiers, if you really want to craft like the really, really good items, or if you want to just target craft, hey, I want to make a helmet that has, 100 life. If I want to guarantee that the helmet that I'm crafting has 100 life, you can just use a deafening essence of greed like this. You guarantee no matter what, you get that 1 life modifier. Everything else will be random. But if that's all you're looking for, very easy to just use a single one and go from there. But also, that's higher than a regular tier 1 life. We call this tier 0 life or essence tier. And this is actually even a step higher than what you could get normally. And if you want to craft like the really, really good item, then you can start from an essence. So the way essences work is it's a full reforge. So there's no way to stop the essence from reforging everything. So when if you see essence modifiers, if you want to craft something with an essence modifier, this has to be the first step. There is no way to there's no normal way to keep an essence modifier onto an item further on down the road. So say we are starting with this blue item and we want to, let's see, it says adds on a weapon, this will add 0.7 to 0.9% of physical attack damage leached as life. Upgrades a normal item to a rare. So we'll start off with the Weeping Essence of Greed. It upgrades a normal item to a rare item with 1 guaranteed property. Properties restricted to level 60 and below. That means that we can't craft it on a higher item level item, which is interesting. We see that this is for a weapon. We're going to be crafting on this wand. It will add 0.7 to 0.9% of physical attack damage leached as life. If this item were, we have to make sure we scour the item first. It only upgrades a normal item, which is white, to rare. It will become rare and guarantees has that physical attack damage leached as lifeline on it. Now we can use higher tier essences if we want, because these ones are not restricted to by item level. We can use the Deafening Essence of Greed, and this will actually give us the tier 0 super high tier one, the 1.1 to 1.3 leached as life, and it will re-roll the wand. And now everything else re-rolled, but it now has that guaranteed 1.13% of physical attack damage leached as life. And that is basically the core of what essences are. And if you're just like curious about essences in general, I can type like fire, right? And I can just see like, what does this one do? Well, this is fire damage to spells, fire damage to attacks on gloves. They do different things across different stuff. So like you can just kind of go through the different essences, look at them. You can go to the wiki and just read through what they all do and get like a really good idea of how they work. Now there's one exception, or not one exception, but there are 4 exceptions to these normal essences. Now there's the fancy ones. I don't know what they're called. You get them by using a remnant of corruption on scorn, envy, misery, or dread in the map. So when you see the essence, if you see the purple ones, these guys, you use a remnant of corruption and you will make an essence of horror, delirium, hysteria, and this is insanity, goes right here. And what these do is they have very, very special things. Socketed gems deal 30% more elemental damage, or chance to get a power, frenzy, or endurance charge on kill. Or delirium, when your hits inflict decay, dealing 700 damage. Like they do things that you can actually, it can be like an extra gem in your socket. So these are very, very specific for doing fancy things. Like this weapon one, this league right now, there's something called the Fireburst Auto Bomber. You'll see cast level 20 Fireburst on hit, and people are making entire very strong builds around just crafting Essence of Hysteria weapons. So the advanced ones do really cool things. They also sell for good money. Depending on the type of the league, they can sell for 30 to 50 or even 60 chaos, depending on the demand. So these things can be really good for just making money. That's a little side tip there. But other than that, yeah, if you just want to craft, for a specific thing, or you want to just quickly get a modifier that, you want to get life on a helmet, put it on there and go, this is something that you can do. Now, just so you see, looking in a little bit more detail, the prefix modifier is called essences. It is not a tier or anything like that. It is just specifically the essence tier, and you can look out for that. So when you're looking at someone else's craft, you can, if you can see the advanced modifiers on it, you can tell if they crafted with an essence craft first, and that's how you can kind of reverse engineer how someone might have crafted their item. And that's about it for essence crafting, really. You need to start off with it, because the essence modifier, you know, when you use an essence, it rerolls the item, so you can't just do a whole bunch of things and then essence craft. You have to start with it. Next, we have fossils. It's actually the first thing that I ever did that introduced me to crafting before Harvest League. It actually blew my mind the first time I did it. Is I was just throwing frigid fossils at a helmet. I got nearby enemies have -9 cold res, and I was able to sell it for like 2 or 3 exalts, and it just blew my mind that I could make money doing something so simple. And that's like that excitement is what I wanna get all you guys doing. So what fossils do is as advertised on the tin, they effectively work as a chaos orb. So if you use an alchemical, it works as an alchemy orb, and if you use the chaotic, it acts as a chaos orb. But what it does is, from that pool, so like a chaos orb will reroll the whole item, and it just uses that whole pool that I was talking about earlier. Whereas by socketing different fossils into the resonators, it will actually modify that pool. So the jagged fossil, for example, will make it more likely to get physical modifiers, but it will also block all of the chaos modifiers. I haven't talked about tags yet, but the tags that you'll see here are the tags that are modified by using different fossils. So if we want more speed modifiers or more attack modifiers or fewer chaos modifiers like the jagged, anything with the chaos tag will get fully blocked, and they actually can't get rolled. And we can show that by clicking on fossil and say that we're going to use a jagged fossil. Now, if we look at that, all of the chaos tags are now blocked. And it means that we can just not hit those. This is a strategy that you can use to do a couple rolls on something and make it much more likely to get what you want. And so what you can do is, there's also 1, 2, 3, and 4 socket resonators, so we can combine up to 4 different fossils at a time. And really, like, if you set it up perfectly, you can make it effectively guaranteed to hit the exact rolls you want, or very, very close, on just a single attempt. But obviously the price goes up. A prime chaotic resonator right now, so the price goes up significantly as you try to get more expensive resonators. It's only 1 chaos effectively 1 chaos for the 1 and 2s, and then the 3 is 3 chaos, and then the 4 is 40 chaos. They are very much less common. However, as I said, if you have just a perfect set of fossils put together, you can really just target the modifiers that you're looking for. If I want more physical modifiers and no chaos modifiers, I can use a jagged fossil. And then if I want to also block life defense, so more defense modifiers but no life modifiers. And then, so here's the interesting thing you can do is, where's the pristine fossil? We can also do more life modifiers and no defense modifiers. So the no, so more and less is a modifier, right? It's a multiplicative, but no means multiply by 0, no matter what, by 0. So by combining something like a dense and a pristine, you actually can't have defense or life modifiers, and you can actually block a gigantic pool by doing that. And we can show that in Craft of Exile by choosing both a dense and a pristine fossil. And now we see that all life modifiers are actually blocked here. Oh, there's actually no defense modifiers on a wand. So that's that interaction doesn't do too much here, but it's a way that you can seriously block a lot of modifiers. But other than that, what you usually do, and if we look at my crafting tab, you'll just socket a bunch of resonators at a time, and you'll try to hit a very specific thing. So for example, and I'm just going to do this off the top of my head, if I want to hit fire damage and a lightning modifier, if I want to hit fire and lightning, actually I don't have any 2s here. If I want to just hit fire, for example, and actually what you can do with your resonators, that was an old habit. You can click it, you can hold shift, and then just do this and bring them down. And then, so I would use scorched, so more fire and no cold modifiers. And if I really want to go for fire modifiers here, I can socket scorched modifiers in my resonators. It has to be, since it acts the exact same as a chaos orb, we have to make sure it's a yellow item first. So you can use an alchemy to automatically make it yellow. And then we can just right click our resonator and do it. And you'll see that we actually got 2 fire modifiers by doing that, and we will never hit a cold modifier. And, we would just use, 2 or 3 if we want to go for a certain tier, and then we can check in here and we'll say like, okay, this is actually item level 20 or 19, let's say. And, we're going for fire damage. We know at the very best, tier 7 fire damage is the best we'll ever hit because it's a low tier item. And we look here and we see that we have tier 9 fire damage. Well, that's no good. We want a little bit better than that. Oh, dang. We hit tier 7 fire damage. There we go. Perfect roll. We're good to go. We crafted our item. So similarly to essences, they're kind of in the same category. A fossil works just like a chaos orb. It's a full reforge. So if you're crafting something, and so essences and fossil crafting are actually generally mutually exclusive, because it does a full reforge. So if you start with an essence or you start with a fossil, when as soon as you use that item, if you use another one of either a fossil or an essence, it will reforge everything that's already on it and you lose what's there. So, this is always the first step in your crafting. Then you work on it afterwards. So that's mostly what fossil crafting is. There's some more advanced fossils that I can talk about very quickly. So the hollow fossil will give you an abyssal socket. So, similar to a Stygian vise, you can actually get an abyssal socket on like your helmet, your boots, your glove, your weapon, whatever. You can stack a bunch of abyssal sockets if you really want to. If your build isn't gem starved, you could stack a bunch of abyssal sockets that give you a bunch of damage, which is pretty cool. A tangled fossil, which just gives you any fossil modifiers. This doesn't really mean too much these days. People don't really care about that. A fractured fossil will create a split copy. We'll go into what splitting is and all that a little bit later when we get to beast crafting. Faceted fossil, this is unique because this is the only way to get more gem modifiers. Everything else, there is no other crafting method that lets you target gem modifiers. And those are the very powerful ones that I talked about earlier, the plus to gem level. You'll see that we have plus to level socketed gems, plus socketed melee gems. And these are generally pretty low weighting compared to some of the other modifiers. They're often very hard to hit. And so using a faceted fossil in combination, you can, that's where you would set up like a quadruple resonator with your faceted fossil and some other ones to make it so you can get like a really, really targeted craft and get plus gem levels there. That's a special one. A bloodstained fossil will give you a vol modifier. This can be very cool, but not particularly desired. Although with vol lightning strike, maybe some people are doing this. These are the specific vol modifiers. It's generally for vol skills. People generally don't value this, but with vol skills getting more popular in 3.14, perhaps this will change. The glyphic fossil, this one is interesting, but it's weird because you can't choose which one of these you get. So just like I talked about the specific special essences that you get from the Remnant of Corruption, the Delirium, Horror, Hysteria, Insanity, the glyphic fossil will give you a random one when you're crafting. And that just isn't particularly useful because when you're trying to craft these items, it's usually very, very specific. However, there can be circumstances where you have like a quad resonator set up and you want the delirium one and you're willing to go until you hit that delirium modifier on that weapon, for example. And then if we just go down the line for the other fossils here, there are some, so the perfect fossil, the special thing about the perfect fossil is it will give you a random quality, I think from 10 to 20 or 10 to 30. And so this is one of the ways that you can get 30% quality on an item. And as I said earlier, 30% quality will give you more defense on armor, more offense on weapons. And it's kind of the most common usage is you want to 30 qual something before you try to 6-link it with fusing orbs, because it just makes it way more likely for you to hit that 6-link, which can be a very painful process otherwise. Gilded fossil will give you another prefix on the item. And this can be useful for when you're double corrupting an item and you're trying to get you want it to overwrite that prefix instead of the other prefix on the item. So, if the item already has one prefix, it will add an additional one, and then it will allow you to, it can replace that item as overvalued by vendor's prefix and keep your other one if you're doing a corruption, which can be pretty nifty. A sanctified fossil is, it still rerolls the item, but the numeric modifiers are lucky and high level modifiers are more common. So what that means is you're more likely to get the higher tier of those modifiers that you get, and it basically rolls those values twice and gives you the higher of that. That's what lucky means in the game. It'll roll twice and just give you the higher number. Unlucky is the opposite, rolls twice and gives you the lower one. And then the last special fossil is the enchanted fossil. The most common usage here is you will just take like a high item level helmet, because helmet enchantments are the most valued. And you can just use 100 enchanted fossils on it if you don't want to run lab, because running lab is not your favorite thing in the game. And you can just throw a bunch of enchanted fossils, and if you get lucky, you can hit an enchantment that is worth good money. I believe that you can even hit non-Uber lab enchants as well. So they're not super valuable because it's really, really hard to hit the enchantment that's worth money, but it can be a fun gamble. So that's a fun thing that you can do as well. And yeah, that's fossil crafting. And just like essence crafting, it's what you're going to start off with, and you will you'll try to get your base item from there, and then generally you'll work on it afterwards. All right, next is catalyst. So this was added in Metamorph League. It doesn't do a ton, it doesn't do a lot, but it can be, in crafting, you can use it to try to target certain modifiers or make it less likely to lose modifiers. It adds quality to an item, but it's targeted quality. So, we have quality on our armor and on our weapons, but we can add quality on jewelry as well. So catalysts add quality to jewelry. So you can quality up your rings and your belt and your amulet, and it will add for those types of modifiers. For example, on my Circle of Nostalgia here, I have physical and chaos damage quality on it. And you'll see that my chaos damage there says 15 to 22 when I hold Alt. That shows the basic value. But you'll see it also says 20% increased above that chaos damage. So that 15 to 22, when I let go of Alt, now changes to 18 to 26 because it's a 20% boost to that line. Now you can do the same thing. We see the strength here, they are mutually exclusive. So I use the abrasive catalyst, which is attack modifiers. If I use intrinsic catalyst, which enhances attribute modifiers, you'll see that it has 24 strength as the implicit. If I use just one of them, it now goes down to 5% quality for the attribute modifiers. That's because they're mutually exclusive. So when you use a different catalyst, it will overwrite the previous one. Exactly the same as other quality currency. If you do it on a white item, it's 5%, 2% at a blue item, and 1% at a time on a yellow item. So you'll see that the 24 strength is now improved by 5%, and now it's 25 strength. So what a catalyst does in crafting is when you're annulling or adding a modifier, those are the only two situations, it will consume that quality and make it that much more likely to keep in the chance of an annul or to add that type of modifier. So we have quality assigned to attribute modifiers here, and let's make that 20%. If I transmute this item, let's make sure it only has one modifier. So open suffix, if I augment this, it is much more likely to add an attribute as the suffix, because that is a valid suffix for it to get, and it will consume the quality when I do that. So you'll see, while it did not hit an attribute modifier, it consumed 2% of the quality. And it will do the same thing with an exalted orb if the item were yellow. And we can do this to try to make it much more likely. So we haven't, let's aug this or alteration until we have an open suffix. Now we still have 18% quality. We can use one more intrinsic to bring it back to 20%. Then we use another augment. See? There we go. It's not guaranteed, it just makes it more likely. But because we had the quality there, that's probably a good chunk of why we hit that strength. Now, if we use an annulment orb, because of it, let's make it back 20%. if we use an annulment orb now, it will consume the quality again and make it less likely for us to lose the strength. It's most likely going to hit that max life like that. And it consumed all of the quality and it made it less likely to hit the max strength. And that's how you can use catalyst when you're crafting. Now, those are as far as I know, the only two circumstances where the catalyst comes into play. If you catalyst up your item before you start crafting it and you start using fossils and essences and chaos and all that, you'll see that it doesn't get consumed. If it does not get consumed, it is not affecting the crafting. So it's not just like a bonus that you have all the time. It only gets consumed in those specific circumstances. So, it's nice to start off with that because it only takes 4 to quality up a white item and then you don't have to worry about it. But also the nice thing is if you know you want to specifically target life and mana modifiers on your jewelry that you're crafting, you can fertile catalyst it first. And that way, when you're crafting, if you have really, really good stuff and you have to use an annul and you want to remove something that is not life or mana, you already have 20% fertile on it, and your annulment orb is much, much less likely to hit the modifiers that you want to keep. Before you start crafting jewelry, consider using a catalyst if you know you might end up in the place where you're going to exalt or annul or something and you're targeting certain types of modifiers. And that's really all that catalysts do. It's a lot. It's not, I don't want to minimize it, but that's all of the real uses that I know of for catalysts. And then what you can also do is I bought unique rings, and you can just quality them up and push the value that you get out of those modifiers on the uniques.
Just yet.
Oh, I did forget to mention that it is also affected by regals. Regals count the same effectively as an augment or an exalt for purposes of adding another modifier to the item. So just know that if you are alteration into regal, that regal will consume your quality, and it can be very useful, but keep that in mind if that's your crafting process. All right, beast crafting. This is something that I slept on for a long time. I didn't play Bestiary League, and one of my friends who is a good crafter did play Bestiary League. He actually liked it a lot. And he's always there to remind me of I'll just be chaos spamming an item or something on Discord, and he'll just be like, "Hey, did you consider using X, Y, or Z in the menagerie?" And I was like, "Oh, that would have been so much better." I think it's really easy to forget what's available in the menagerie, and I just wanted to point that out. So
I'm not up to
the
that
most
yet.
common, and I'm just going to point out the things that I use. There are other crafts here, but the stuff that I use the most, I think that never forget that you can add a suffix modifier to flasks. I guess I haven't talked about flasks yet, so let's do a flask and menagerie section. So with flasks, what's a good flask we can just do here? Let's do a silver flask. So flasks are they follow all of the same rules as everything else that we've talked about, but they can only become magic. You cannot make a rare flask. That means you can only have one prefix and one suffix. The most important thing that most people care about on their flasks is immunity to curses, immunity to freeze, immunity to burnt ignite or corrupted blood, stuff like that. And those are all suffixes. And what we can do is guarantee. So if we want something that has just a prefix, so we want to go until we have just a prefix that we care about. So we just alteration spam. So perpetual, sure, increased charge recovery. Also, I used glass blowers baubles. This is the quality currency for a flask. We made it 20%, and now we can just add a suffix to our flask. And so if I want an anti-freeze flask of heat, it's the opposite of that. We put in a flask that has no suffix on it. We do the little craft here. We kill the monsters. Make sure we don't die to any on-death effects. And now we have a perpetual silver flask of heat. And this is a really, really useful way. You start seeing Einhar, I think in Act 2. You'll see Einhar then. If you need a specific type of flask that has one of these, as soon as you do your first Einhar, come down to your menagerie and just see if you can add a nice mod to a flask. It can be really good for leveling early, and just never forget it for later on also. Now, in terms of more advanced crafting, these guys. So the Ferric Lynx Alpha and the Ferric Wolf Alpha. What these guys do is kind of a targeted annul, but also switch the modifiers. So add a suffix, remove a prefix, or add a prefix, remove a suffix. Now, you can't do this unless you are able to satisfy the requirements. You can't have full prefixes and say remove a suffix and then like don't add a prefix. So there has to be an open prefix and you have to have at least one suffix. But you can do this to say you have two really good prefixes that you care about and one good suffix and one good suffix and one bad suffix, right? You don't want to lose. You don't want to risk one of those prefixes. So instead of having a 25 out of 100 chance of hitting the modifier that you want to hit, you can actually make it a 50-50 by just removing a suffix. You risk adding a bad prefix, but there's things that you can do with like crafting in your crafting bench to block one of those. Say you have one prefix, you could craft another prefix that blocks one of those mod groups that I was talking about earlier, and then you remove the prefix and you make it more likely to get remove the bad suffix and make it more likely to get a prefix that you don't care if you get, or hopefully one you even like. And that puts you into a 50-50 instead of a 1 out of 4. And so that's why like the using the ferric links and the ferric wolf alpha can be really good. Then there is the creating an imprint. So what an imprint does is you can take a blue item. So this, for reference, this costs about 100 chaos. You can take a blue item and it will create an imprint of it. You have to fight the monsters, so always make sure that your character is capable of fighting the monsters. Now I have this item and I have this thing called an imprint. Now you'll see it imprinted the cobalt carved wand. It can only be used on this specific item. If you do anything to the item, except for some advanced harvest stuff, you can always use the imprint on the item and bring it back to this state. So say if I rolled like a very, very, very hard to hit modifier using alteration orbs on this wand, I can now do all sorts of crafting. And like if I hit a step in my crafting that I am not able to recover from safely, I can then use my imprint on it to go back to that. This is a huge, huge boon to people that are trying to do really big crafts off of a modifier that's hard to hit. I did this for crafting bows a lot this league. There's the of many modifier on a bow, plus 2 arrows on attack, and that is very, very hard to hit. So what I can do is start from that just base. I used a lot of alterations for multiple days. I hit that modifier, and then I just I try to work on it, and if I brick the item, I use the imprint, I go back to the blue version, and then I can keep crafting again. Very, very useful. So you can even do like more advanced things like using a Crusader's Orb or any of these more advanced things on it. And as long as I don't fracture it or split it, which we'll show splitting in a second, I can always use an imprint and get back to where it was. So for example, I'll regal this and I could craft on it or anything, right? And so say I did a whole bunch of things on this. I can then use the imprint and goes back to exactly where it was before I did the imprint. It's basically like a snapshot in time, and you can just say, go back to where this was. Now, splitting. So this is, I hinted at it with the fossils. What splitting is it's actually changed pretty significantly this patch. So it's good that I didn't make this video last patch. Splitting is with the Phenomal Plagued Arachnid. Also, these are the items. These are items in your Bestiary. So if I purchase an item from Einhar, these things, they cost 1 chaos, a Bestiary orb. Then I can go view my Bestiary. And so this is the Ferric Links Alpha. I can right click it and capture him. And now the Ferric Link Alpha is in this little item. I can use this to sell and trade with other players. Or just to like your Bestiary can actually get full. And if you're over full on too many of the beasts, you can actually just pull them out and put them in a stash tab. The Phenomal Plagued Arachnid, this guy, and then to put it in your menagerie, you right click it. So what this does is it will split an item. So if we go down here, we'll see split an item in 2 with half the mods on each item. Does not work on influence or split items. So this has to be a rare item. So we regal it. Now it's a rare item. And what this does is, so by it being a rare item, it has to have 3 modifiers, although we can kind of get around that. So here's just little tricks you can do. Use an annulment orb. So because we want, like, let's say we specifically want to target just 2 of those modifiers. And we want to make sure that the items that we split have 1 of one and 1 of the other. Now we can put it in here and we will split the item by doing the Phenomal Plagued Arachnid recipe. Just like this. And now you'll see there's one wand on the ground and one wand in here. And it took, each suffix is now on each wand. And you'll notice that it added the split tag. What that means is you can no longer split it again. There's no way there. People were finding ways around it earlier this league, but there's no way to remove that split tag. And by splitting it, it actually became a new item. Both of these are new items as a demonstration in Paint here. So the original, let's say we have the original item here. You know, this is our original wand. This guy, let's draw that a little bit better. This is their original wand. And let's say we even made an imprint, right? Let's say we made one of those imprints, right? Like this. This is a little imprint face. We made that imprint. That imprint points specifically to that item. By splitting, it now made 2 new wands. And these 2 new wands are they're no longer viable for that imprint. This item no longer exists. This item is gone. By splitting, this item doesn't exist. You cannot use the imprint on it. You cannot go back to that imprint. And now you have 2 brand new items that you can do whatever. So you can imprint these items and they can't be split again anymore. But this item, you can imprint it. You can do everything. It is effectively, it's a whole new item. And you created it with, you splitting those 2 base modifiers in half. So a kind of a neat thing that you can do for split items is, say you made a 6 white link bow, right? Like a really fancy, like 6 white link bow. And let's say you even got like 1 really good prefix and 1 really good suffix. You can make 2 new 6 white link bows, and each one has a good modifier on it. And you can maybe sell that or craft up from there. Make that a imprint each one of those and craft them individually, or sell them to someone else for like a really good base that has a good modifier on it already. So that's what you would use split for these days. And you can split anything in the game. Like you could split a map, you could split you could split a bow, you can split anything. Those are the big modifiers here. There's also the Ferric Frost Hellion, which reroll mod values. That is effectively just a divine, just using a divine orb on it. That is it for what I use harvest crafting for. So imprinting, if you're starting from a very hard to get modifier, you're going to alteration orb until you get it. You imprint it, and then you're going to work from there. And you can just keep buying imprints, using it, and crafting from there. If the amount of time and alteration orbs that it takes to get that modifier are more, it's more than your value for that 100 chaos or 1 exalt that the imprint costs, that's probably the right way to go. Or, if you're crafting, like you can even use this on cluster jewels or whatever, say you have one good prefix and 1 good suffix and 1 bad suffix on a cluster jewel, right? You can do the Ferric Wolf Alpha, and you can 50-50 remove that bad suffix and try to get a good prefix. And if you get that good prefix, that is, and most likely there's a good chance that prefix is another notable, right? Like let's say you have a notable prefix and a suffix, and then a bad suffix. If you remove that bad suffix, and like you have a good chance of getting a notable on that prefix, you just made possibly a 5 to 10 exalt cluster jewel. Cool little trick that you can do. That's actually I use those on cluster jewels a lot. So that is that's primarily what I use Bestiary stuff for. All right, this is I guess the first advanced topic. This is influenced, synthesized, and fractured items. I'm doing this in standard because it's very expensive and I don't want to use my league currency on it. And yeah, that should give you a clue that this is the type of crafting where you don't get into this until you're like, this is when you're ready to spend at least a couple exalts. So influence, I put synthesized and fracturing in that same category because they are all mutually exclusive. So what that means is we have our base item, and it can have an additional modifier that counts as part of what the base item is. You'll see if I mouse over these gloves, they have you'll see that white, the white wings in the at the top. That means that they are redeemer items. And you also see that it has like the icy glow behind it. These gloves that you'll see that has the Crusader icon, and it has the lightning. It's like the Baron lightning. What that means is it is influenced by that conqueror. The only thing that it really means is it expands the pool of modifiers able to be on that item. So if we go back, yeah, I was buying 8 Exalt Maven Orbs in Standard. It's pretty crazy. If we go back to Craft of Exile here, you'll see that there are these drop downs here that are, I have them closed by default, because unless you have that influence on that item, it cannot roll those modifiers. But by gaining these modifiers, so let's start from scratch here. So we are crafting gloves. They are int gloves. They are Redeemer int gloves. What that means is now, in addition to all of these modifiers, we now also have these ones, and especially the, what GGG thinks is more valuable, they have a much lower weight to roll. So some of these can be particularly hard to hit because we have both the original 59,000 prefix. In addition, now we actually have 65,000, and we want to hit that 500 weight out of there, and there's no tags on it or anything. It can be difficult to hit these things. And there's a number of strategies to hit them. The number one basic one would be have Redeemer gloves, alteration, alchemy, do all that type of stuff. But also we have exalted orbs for the conquerors. So this is a Crusader's exalted orb. What that does is it will add the Crusader influence, but it also guarantees that it adds a new Crusader modifier to that rare item. So if we have the item like fully crafted up, it's perfectly good to go, and we want to just get this one Crusader modifier, as I showed earlier, if we want to have, we can block certain mod groups and make it more likely to hit the thing that we're going for. You can only use a Conqueror exalted orb on an item that is not influenced. I can't use it. Item has influence. So an item by default can only have one influence on it. So if it's already influenced, we can't use the exalted orb. But we can use it on another item that is not yet influenced. So you'll see it says removes 20% quality applied by catalysts. So as I was showing earlier, we can catalyze jewelry and make it even more likely to hit the certain modifiers that we're going for. I don't play Standard, so I don't. Let me find my catalyst here. So if we want, what we can do is we can look at Crusader jewelry. We go to Amulet, and we look at Crusader here. We can see that, increased intelligence. Perhaps we want to hit increased intelligence. To make that more likely is we can craft up our item. Let's hit it with an alchemy. We want to make sure it has an open suffix. Actually, we want to use intrinsic catalyst first, and then we can alchemy it. Make sure it has an open suffix. It doesn't. Maybe use a couple chaos orbs. Okay, it has an open suffix now, and in fact, it has tier 3 intelligence on it already. If we remember, there is not a mod group that's blocked there. The intelligence by default is in mod group 10. Now we can go back and hit it with the Crusader's exalted orb. That will add the Crusader's influence to it. And we see that it actually added a prefix because we had an open prefix. I did not block the prefix before I did that. That was a mistake. Let's do that again. Yeah, let's keep the mistakes in here. That's the thing, right? So if you have an open prefix, you're not guaranteed to get a suffix. Okay. So we have another Crusader's orb. We have another attributed up Onyx Amulet. And let's see, open suffix and no open prefixes. So we have 3 prefixes. They are full. So we are guaranteed to hit a suffix. We have quality attribute modifiers. And if we look here, that is the only Crusader attribute suffix. It has a pretty good weight. So we have a decent chance of hitting increased intelligence. However, there are 2 tiers, so we have to worry about that. Let's see if we hit it. We did not. So 2 goes, we did our best. You see it consumed the quality. The catalyst thing is not guaranteed, but that's what we hit. And so you see that it now has the Crusader influence, and it just has those things in addition to its pool. Now, the other things that kind of count as influences that are mutually exclusive are synthesized and fractured items. So this is a fractured wand that I have from Harvest League. So you'll see that the prefix there, cremating, is kind of a gold color. It's kind of a dark gold color. What that means is it is fractured on, no matter what you do to that item, if you scour it or exalt it, orbit, or throw it in a fire and pick it up again, that modifier is locked on permanently. You cannot remove it. This can be very, very useful for crafting a very difficult to craft item. So as you saw what we could do with imprinting items. So instead of imprinting it, you can fracture that modifier on there, and then you don't even have to worry about imprinting or anything. You can just chaos spam and try to get additional stuff in it instead of like very carefully building up from the imprint. And that can make crafting, a lot of people do this with bows, with thicket bows. They get the +2 arrows that I mentioned earlier. They try to fracture it on, which is a harvest craft that you can do here. Oh, these are old ones that you don't get anymore. So you'll get a harvest craft that will say fracture either 1 out of 3 prefixes, 1 out of 3 suffixes, or 1 out of 5 totem modifiers. So you need to have at least 3 prefixes or suffixes to do those, or 5 totem modifiers, and then it will pick from one of those. So you have a 30%, 1 in 3% chance of hitting one of those prefixes, and etc. for the other ones. Those are very uncommon to get these days in league play, so they cost about 10 exalts on a trade site to get. But if you hit that fractured base, then you can craft up from it, and it's very, very easy to craft. It is mutually exclusive. You cannot have a Redeemer influenced fractured item. They are all mutually exclusive from each other. So if you want to craft something that has an influence modifier, you have to make sure that you're not doing anything that you want. You can't do fracturing for that craft. Similarly, you can get a synthesized item. So it's effectively a new base item. So it still says diamond ring, but it's basically not a diamond ring anymore. This was a diamond ring, and the image still is. But if you look at the prefix, it's no longer critical strike chance. It is -1 to mana cost of skills. And that is it's just a new implicit modifier. You can actually get up to 3 implicits on a synthesized item. They come from synthesis maps, and you can get them in other places, but that's the most common place to get a synthesized item. There's very, very valuable synthesized bases like Frenzy Charge on gloves or rings, or power charges as well, stuff like that, or Curse on Hit. So there can be really, really good synthesized bases that if it drops, you could sell for 50 to 100 exalts, or you could craft it up yourself if you want to use it. So that's another thing that can exist in the game. It's just a new implicit. All the explicits are totally open, and you craft it up normally. But again, this is mutually exclusive with influenced, with like Conqueror influenced items. Now, additional things that you can do with influenced items. So all of the influences are Shaper and Elder. So they kind of live outside the Conqueror stuff. There's no orbs for those, so they have to drop that way. Or there is a Harvest Craft Reforge influence on an item. So you can take a Crusader item and change what that influence is. It'll do a full Reforge, and maybe you could turn it into a Shaper or Elder influence. And so there's the 4 Conquerors, and then there's Shaper and Elder. And there's also double influenced items. So if you look at my boots, you see in the upper left, it is Veritania, the Redeemer, and the upper right is El Hasmin, the Hunter. So that, just as I said before, just adding an influence adds to the pool of modifiers that you can get on that item. Now, how do you have a double influenced item? Well, you have to use an Awakener's Orb that drops from Cirrus to combine those 2 items. What that will do is it will take 1 influence modifier. So if you have 3 influence modifiers on each item, it'll pick 1 of each one of those. It will destroy. So you right click the Awakener's Orb, you left click on one item, and then you left click on the other item. It will destroy the first item that you clicked on and add the influence to the new item. It will take 1 influenced modifier from each one of those, combine them, and then re-roll everything else. So you'll have a guaranteed 2 influence modifiers, 1 from each original item, and then the other up to 4 modifiers will be totally random, so you have no control. So Awakener's Orb is definitely a YOLO. You can get bad, and I've had to deal with this a lot this league, is you can get like a bad modifier that you can't easily remove without like a YOLO and null. So to show this off, I will roll these until they have influence modifiers, and then we'll awaken them together. And in fact, I'll use one of the Maven's Orbs as well. So what a Maven's Orb does, it will increase the tier of an influenced modifier. So it will do that by removing 1 influence modifier. So you need at least 2. It will remove one of them, and basically take its power and put it into the other one. If you have like a tier, you have 2 tier 1 modifiers, it will delete one of them and turn this one into a tier 0 modifier. The Maven's Orb will allow you to create a tier 0 modifier, which is a new one, which is super, super powerful. Sometimes it'll add brand new lines of power to them. If we take an example, so you can't do it on jewelry. So we're going to go to gloves here. That's what we're working with. Oh yeah, jewelry and weapons are not Mavenable also. So if we go to Craft of Exile, you'll see this Maven Orb. If we mouse over it, you'll see that tier 3 is 16%, 21, 26, and the Maven version is 31%. Goes all the way up to 60%. So it's like double as powerful as the tier 1 modifier. And some of them are like super, super crazy. Well, they'll add like another line, like physical damage converted to fire, but also gain 5% physical as extra fire. It'll add like a whole nother line of power to it. So you can do really, really cool things with that, but it does just increase the tier by 1. So if you have a tier 2 modifier, it'll just turn to a tier 1. So you wasted that whole Maven Orb and you didn't even make an elevated modifier. And they cost, currently they cost about 4x in League and 8x in Standard. So these things are not cheap. So what it has to do, so we have to roll until we have 2 influenced modifiers. So let's do that. And we can tell if something is an influenced modifier because it will just have the name Redeemers or of Redemption, Hunters of Hunter, stuff like that. Elders, Eldritch, Shaper of Shaping. You can tell very easily by the name of the modifier here. So we see we have adds cold damage if you dealt a critical strike, prefix modifier, Redeemers. So we want to do this until we see 2 Redeemers modifiers. All right, that wasn't too bad. So we have Redeemers prefix, tier 2. So we really hope we don't elevate that one. And then we have tier 1 suffix, global chance to bind enemies on hit. If you have more than 2, it will remove 1 and just add that power to one of the other ones. Ideally, if you're trying to do anything targeted, you'll try to do it off of 2. So we're going to use a Maven Orb. This is throwing 8 exalts in the garbage. We are going to use a Maven's Orb on these gloves, and we hope we elevate the global blind. So you'll see it will remove one of them. Unfortunately, it removed the global blind, and now you get to see the pain of using a Maven's Orb, and it turned the tier 2 Redeemer's prefix into a tier 1. We have no other Redeemer's mods on here, so this is a viable base for now using the Awakener's Orb. Now on here, we want to just go for 1 Crusader modifier. All right, we have tier 1 physical damage converted to lightning. So what we want to do is, if we look at these 2 gloves, they're both item level 85. They're both Fingler Silk, so it doesn't really matter which base we destroy. We want to combine these 2 gloves and have the physical damage, critical strike, and the physical damage converted to lightning. We will combine these with an Awakener's Orb. Everything else will be totally random. We have no control over it. This is a 100% gamble. We make a base that has 2 modifiers that we know we want, but everything else is kind of up to chance. So this is the base we want to destroy. So we right-click the Awakener's Orb, we left-click this, and then we left-click this one, and then we look away. You don't want to look right away. And then if we look at it, it rolled a whole new item. So you'll see it's Crusader and Redeemer. And if we hold Alt, we see it has the Crusader prefix and the Crusader and the Redeemer prefix that we had. And in fact, it rolled another Crusader prefix, tier 1 max cold res, which is actually pretty cool. But then everything else on this is totally random. Totally random. So this is now an item that we can continue to craft up, and but there's a chance that this bricked. Now, if this did brick, we could have done is on the base, so this is the item. This was the Redeemer item. If we had imprinted it, so say it was a white item, or sorry, a blue item, and we had that elevated Maven mod on it and everything, we could use an imprint. We could use the Phenomenal Plague Arachnid, or sorry, the Crazy Chimeral, and make that imprint. Even after we did the Awakener's Orb, we could use the imprint. We wouldn't get this item back. The Crusader item is gone, but we would go back to the original Redeemer item that still had that physical damage if you dealt a critical strike recently. So if you have like a really nice item that you spent 8 exalts with a Maven Orb, and you have that nice mod that you want to keep, and you're just throwing another item into it, make an imprint first. And then if your Awakener's Orb is really bad, like you hit Dexterity and Intelligence and rarity, and you can't get rid of them safely, just use that imprint. You know, you lose the Crusader item, but at least you don't lose that Maven orb, and you can just keep going. So that's how you do Awakener stuff. You know, it's totally YOLO. It is what it is. Now what we can do, just to show a little bit of something. Unfortunately, they're all prefixes. But if we really don't like that cold res, we can go for a YOLO here, right? We have another Maven's Orb. The Maven's Orb will choose one of those 3 to destroy, and it will elevate and make that the tier 0 Maven modifier. So if we use a second Maven Orb on this, it will destroy. Let's cross our fingers and say we want to remove the cold res. It did not remove the cold res. It removed the physical damage to attacks, but it gave us elevated Crusaders, physical damage as extra lightning, and physical damage converted to lightning. Like, that's a very, very powerful mod. It removes one and elevates another one. And if there's 3, 4, 5, 6 influence modifiers, it's all random. That is how you craft an influenced item. And that's pretty much all that really goes into it. It's an expensive thing. You know, you want to plan things out and go from there. All right. Now I'm going to touch on the more advanced, expensive stuff. This is, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. There's a lot of very advanced strategies that you can do with it. I will link Elishar's YouTube in the description below and in the spreadsheet. All of this will come with a spreadsheet with a lot of detail, just to explain, just to put in one place where, you know, all the stuff I described is. But I'm going to talk about and show some metacrafting. It's not as complicated as it may sound based on its name, but the techniques that you use, it does enable a lot more complexity in the crafting. And as soon as you're jumping into that, I think like really advanced metacrafting stuff is kind of out of the scope of this video. But yeah, definitely ask me questions, you know, anywhere you can find me on Discord or Twitch or anything, and we can talk about that. But yeah, I could talk about metacrafting for an hour by itself, going into all the different strategies that can be done with it. What metacrafting is in the crafting bench. There's a few modifiers that really change what you're able to do while you're crafting, because it kind of lives outside of the basic rules. It modifies the way that the currency works, and that's kind of why it's called metacrafting, because the currency does its stuff based on what I started off saying at the very, very beginning. You have your basic item, you have the state of that basic item that it's in right now, and you have the currency or the tools or whatever that you're using on it, and they just have a set interaction. Metacrafting changes those rules, and that's why it's metacrafting. The big ones are prefixes cannot be changed, cannot roll attack modifiers, and cannot roll caster modifiers. What this allows us to do is totally, or do I not even have, and then suffixes cannot be changed will be a prefix. That'll be up here. What that'll do, like for example, if I do prefixes cannot be changed and I scour the item, that means that even the scouring orb gets countered by that prefixes cannot be changed, and it just will remove all the suffixes. And we can do things like that to interact with the crafting and do kind of more advanced things and modify certain stuff. So for example, if we have these boots, these gloves. So let's try to YOLO annul a suffix. Let's try to YOLO annul a suffix. We did. Even though I don't care about this item, I would be sad if we lost the elevated, right? So we can do prefixes cannot be changed, right? And we put that in here. And now if we scour the item, the prefixes will all still live, and we just clean the suffixes. It's an easy way to just like clean the suffixes and keep working on the item. Another thing that we can do is use both prefixes cannot be changed and suffixes cannot be changed with the can have 3 crafted modifiers, and that will allow us to do really, really fancy things. So that costs 6 exalts. Just doing that costs 6 exalts. But what this means is we have 1 open suffix and 1 open prefix. We can use this to additionally fill some prefixes and suffixes and make sure that when we slam something, like let's say I had one more suffix in there, I can do that to safely fill the suffixes without filling them prematurely. And then I can slam an exalt in there and make sure that I get a prefix if all my suffixes are filled, right? And then if you're super saucy, you could YOLO a null that can have 3 crafted modifiers and hopefully remove that. And, that opens up another suffix that you could slam something else on. Certain things do not respect the meta mods, though. As essences don't care about your meta mods, and fossils don't care about your meta mods. They just live outside of that. This is just for nulls, exalts, harvest crafting as well. Harvest crafting will respect your meta mods. And so like the advanced crafting that most people do today is some sort of interaction between harvest crafting and your meta mods. Is a lot of it. Is a lot of what the advanced crafting is these days. The other things that you can do are cannot roll attack or caster modifiers. This is very, very useful for very, very specific targeted things. So if you have a bow with full prefixes, let's see if I have a bow. Here's a bow. Let's identify it. All right, so we want a bow with an open prefix and full suffixes. Here we go. Perfect. So this bow, if we roll cannot roll attack modifiers, it is a suffix. We have full suffixes. We have one open prefix. Now, this is a very unique interaction that is good to know if you're ever crafting a bow, is every single prefix on a bow has attack. Look at that. Boom, 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 except paragons. This guy right here is paragons. +1 level of socket gems. Normally, it has a medium weight, kind of low, a little lowish. So it's kind of hard to hit, and it's a really nice modifier to hit. Now, suffixes, there's some suffixes that are not attack, but if we have full suffixes and we cannot roll attack modifiers, if we use an exalted orb on it, we are guaranteed to hit +1 level of socket of gems. So that is a unique interaction that you can do, cannot roll certain modifiers for, and then you could do really, really complicated things, right? Like can have multiple crafted modifiers, cannot roll attack, cannot roll caster, and then slam something if you want to like block a whole bunch of modifiers. So, meta mods are, metacrafting is much more complicated. But once you know the basics, it's just learning the specific ways that people use those to craft additional stuff. It's not, it's not out of this world. And once you're used to the basics, it's not that scary. The scary part is just the fact that it costs a lot of money. Like I've already spent 30 exalts just for a reference in standard, just to demonstrate to you guys how some of these things work. And that's just a demo. That's not even a full craft. That's, I think, as far as we really want to go with metacrafting here. I think the best thing is just study as many crafts as you can that are out there. Definitely watch like Elishar's videos, and he'll have metacrafting in a lot of different steps that he does. And just learn them over time. Talk with other people that do crafting, and just see what's out there and start picking up those tips, because there's a lot. And as you saw, it's not even something that you can get into until you're willing to spend 4 to 6 to 10 exalts on a craft anyway. So that is what it is. All right, harvest crafting. This is a topic that I could make a whole 1-hour video on just by itself. So I'm just gonna touch on the basics. Yeah, it's a very complicated thing, the way that you can use it and interact with meta mods and all of that other stuff. It gets kind of subtle and complicated. So I'm just going to touch on it, and I'll put as much detail as I can into the spreadsheet. But I think it's just useful to go to the wiki, read this page, watch Elishar's videos, look at the way that as many people as you can use that in different crafting steps, and start to understand the way that they all work. So harvest crafting it's changed 3 times now since it was added. It started off as incredibly powerful, where you could just say add fire. I just add a fire thing, remove a fire thing, and you could just do that until you hit exactly the thing that you wanted forever. It was very, very simple. It was very simplistic. And now we're in the situation where we've had to, it's been nerfed a number of times, and we've had to come up with clever ways to figure out how to get around those nerfs, but we can still almost make the exact same items that we used to. So the way it works is you find a harvest in your map, you kill the monsters in the garden, and you'll get the certain crafts from those monsters. And then you can store them in your harder crafting station for later. You can put your item in there and you can do the stuff on it. I just demonstrated one of the gigantic nerfs that they did is you can no longer use harvest crafts on influenced items. Some of them you can do, but you can't do the remove and adds. You can do like reforge keeping prefixes, stuff like that. So you can still do some things, but like these really targeted, super fancy ones, they all say non-influenced now. They did not used to say that. So the stuff that's available to us here is we can augment just a random item of a certain group. This is incredibly rare now, but this can just be, like I said, add fire, add whatever. This is so rare now. I've only seen 2 all league, and I only saw them for like the normal exalts, not the targeted ones. Remove non-add. I have not seen a single one of these, but this is you annul like a non-critical strike modifier and add a critical strike modifier. Remove a random influence mod from an item. I have not seen one of these. I'm not sure it's in the game anymore. But yeah, I guess you could remove an influence mod from an item. Reforge, this is basically the most common thing. So when it says of a certain group, the certain groups are like fire, crit, speed, cold, all those like the big tag groups. And so what you can do is guaranteeing 1 or 2 mods. So you can do a reforge. And so as I talked about like the meta mods earlier, this is like the unique kind of interaction here is we can say prefixes cannot be changed. Reforge with fire. So then I guarantee nothing's going to get added to my prefixes, or rather, if there's an open prefix, it can still add one, but it will remove all of the suffixes and guarantee within the open modifiers, something fire will show up. And then there's also an improved version of that that says reforge guaranteeing, but also more common. If you want to get more than 1 fire modifier, for example, you want to do the one that's more common. We call that reforge plus. The upgrade magic item to a rare item, destroying all mods. This one's not used very often. So reforge a rare, keeping all prefix or suffixes. This is very, very valuable. They sell for about 1 exalt if you're trading it with people. Reforge a rare item with more or less likely to receive the same mods. There's some interesting tech here. It's kind of more advanced. So reforging a rare item, keeping all prefixes and suffixes. You know, if you, for example, if you do the awakening orb, right, and you're just putting together 2 good suffixes, you keep those suffixes. And you can just, if you get bad prefixes, you can do that to just clean off your prefixes. And then you can craft suffixes cannot be changed and, you know, reforge fire or something and try to get a fire prefix. And you can do steps like that to try to finish an item after your Awakener's Orb. And that's like a very common thing that is done right now. Super, super useful. Change the modifier that grants fire, cold, or lightning resistance into a similar one. You know, this is good for just fixing your res. If you have like too much lightning res on your items, change 1 lightning to fire, something like that. The other thing is there's the temple mod on gloves, which is a hybrid of like lightning res, but also damage against shock targets. You can change that one to fire res and damage against ignited targets or cold and against frozen targets, right? Or chilled targets. And so like that's like the one, like not advanced, but like the trick that people are doing to make the temple mod more valuable. You know, if the temple mod drops on a pair of gloves, you can just change it into the one that's more valuable that you want to craft. Then you can enchant armor or weapons with better things. So like if you don't care about what quality does on a weapon, like if you have a spellcaster wand, you can make the quality give you spell damage or fire damage or whatever instead of or increased AoE. That's actually one of the more valuable ones. Increased AoE for quality instead of physical damage, because you don't care about the physical damage on your wand. Big thing is reroll numeric values. You can do this for free divine orbs. So that's just a quick overview of Harvest. The interaction between Harvest and the meta mods that I mentioned before, that's where all of the really, really complicated crafting stuff goes into. I'll probably make a video about just that type of stuff, but I think it's out of the scope for this already very long video. I really wanted to make something that's just, here's the basics, you know, getting into a little bit more advanced stuff with influence modifiers, but here's to get you up to speed. Like if you're scared of crafting and you have been hesitant to even hop into it, here's the basics that if you learn that, at least you can watch videos and you know what they're doing, and you can say, hey, I don't have the currency for that, but I know how it works. And maybe next league, I'll find a way to make enough currency and get into that market or get into crafting items for myself. Subtract them from 2 days later here. I missed one thing while I was recording previously, and that is the brand new Veiled Chaos modifiers. So as part of Betrayal, Veiled modifiers have been in the game for a while. However, just in this patch, 3.14 Ultimatum, they kind of got a little bit of a makeover, and they're way better now. So previously, you could unveil modifiers from your item, from things that you picked up, from doing Betrayal, and they would be the same tier as what you could actually craft on your crafting bench. And those were modifiers that you would target farm, like Elrion on rings for minus mana cost on your skills, or trigger socketed spells. So this patch, they reworked a lot of it. Trigger socketed spells is actually weaker now, but if you unveil it on that item, it's actually a higher tier. Some of them are as good as they were before this patch. So trigger socketed spells, for example, on a weapon, it used to be every 4 seconds, and now it's every 8 seconds unless you unveil it, and then it's every 4 seconds. So what does that mean by unveiling it? Well, they added something called the Veiled Chaos Orb, which, much like a Chaos Orb, it allows you to just do a full reroll on an item, and it will have one Veiled modifier. That Veiled modifier will come from the pool of mods that you can get from unveiling on June, and they are actually a higher tier, and they're actually, some of them are special, and they don't show up anywhere else. So if we look at Craft of Exile, under all of the influence modifiers, there's actually veiled modifiers. So these are the ones that June can unveil, and some of them are very, very nice and powerful. I'm a big fan of the power, endurance, and frenzy charge ones. These are really, really nice as a way to get those charges on your character, or even just to get a little boost from just having +1 to the minimum. There's also the big thing that I really like is I'm a big fan of trying to cap out my chaos res in every build. With a lot of the stuff that they've added to the game over the past few leagues, there's more and more chaos damage than there used to be. For example, fighting El Hasmin or fighting Cirrus, who does like all of his damage is 25% converted to chaos. So you can get these nice hybrid mods that give you 20 of an element and chaos res. And you can get that by getting a veiled modifier on your item and then going to June and unveiling that. There's 2 ways actually to get a veiled modifier on an item. It is using the Veiled Chaos Orb, which will just, full chaos reforge and give you just exactly one veiled modifier. However, if you have Ashling in your research safe house at level 3, she doesn't have to be the leader. If she's level 3 with 3 stars and you run Katarina, in that safe house, after you kill Katarina, you will get an Ashling Slam, is what it's called. So it's tier 4 Ashling. That's a new thing that was added in 3.14. And a tier 4 Ashling will actually give you at least one veiled modifier, or a small chance. I've only seen one out of like 20 this whole league. A small chance of getting 2 modifiers. And some of them are really, really powerful. For example, that's how I crafted this ring. I actually had 1 open prefix and 2 open suffixes. I ran the tier 4 Ashling, and it gave me that minimum endurance charges and the cold and chaos res. And that's how I created this really, really unique, cool ring. So it's called just an Ashling Slam or tier 4 Ashling. The one thing to note is you cannot do it if you already have any unveiled modifier on it. So it'll say chosen or of the order. The prefix is called chosen, and the suffix is called of the order, or if you have any crafted modifier on it whatsoever. So you have to remove all your crafted modifiers before you do an Ashling Slam. Conversely, a Veiled Chaos Orb is you just do it. It has to be rare first. And then you just do it, and you'll get a whole new item with a veiled modifier. You can actually tell if it's a prefix or suffix, if it's long or short. Prefixes are long and suffixes are short. So you can tell right away if this is, and I know this is a suffix already because it's short. Now, what you can do is if you are looking for specifically a prefix or suffix, if you unveil now, an unveiled modifier is no longer just a crafted thing that you can remove. It actually becomes a permanent modifier on the item. And then you can craft your own thing on top of that. But while it's still veiled, it actually counts as a crafted modifier. So if you got a suffix and you don't like that, you can actually just go here and do remove crafted mods, and that will remove the suffix. And then, but if you like what you got, you can go into June and unveil, and you will usually be looking for very specific things. Like in this case, 12% chance to deal double damage is very, very nice. And so we can just craft it on, and you'll see that it becomes a permanent suffix on the item. And then we can go over here and actually just craft whatever the heck we want on top of that. So it's a really nice way to get these super special targeted modifiers on your item. The one thing to note is when you're looking in Craft of Exile, some of these have a weight of NA, not applicable, not available. That means that you actually cannot get that from Ashling from a slam. You can, or a Veiled Chaos Orb. You can only get that from an item that was already veiled from a Betrayal Master. So some little extra tech that you can do, and actually how you get additional ones using Veiled Chaos Orb. So normally a Veiled Chaos Orb will just give you one modifier. So what we can do, if you remember from the meta mod discussion, is we can, for example, do prefixes cannot be changed, or I guess in this example, suffixes cannot be changed. And then we can do a Veiled Chaos Orb, and the suffixes will not change. The prefixes will get fully re-rolled, and then we will have a guaranteed prefix veiled modifier. And that's actually how I crafted this bow. Is I started with the bow attacks fire 2 additional arrows. I crafted suffixes cannot be changed. I used a Veiled Chaos Orb. I then unveiled chance to deal double damage on the suffix. Then I crafted can have 3 crafted modifiers. Suffixes cannot be changed. And then I used another Veiled Chaos Orb, and I got the attacks with weapon penetrate elemental resistances. And then I did a YOLO slam. I hit T1, increased elemental damage with attack skills. Cannot roll attack modifiers, +1 socketed gems with just, slam it with an exalt. And that is the entire steps for crafting this bow. Now, there were some missteps in the middle, using imprints and doing all that and going back. But if you just remove the failure states, that is all of the steps to craft this bow. All you do is, so those are the steps to craft the bow, and then the failure states in the middle are using an imprint or doing reforged keeping suffixes and stuff like that, so you can try to clean bad states. And that's really the summary of all of crafting. There's some additional subtle things that I kind of hinted at, but in terms of I've already given you guys all of the tools for crafting this bow that, depending on the state of the league or whatever, this is a 60 to 100 exalt bow, and I crafted it for about 20 to 30x. And there's not a single thing that I did with this craft that I didn't tell you guys how to do in this video. All right, that was a lot of talking. Hopefully I presented the information with enough examples that was useful for everybody. I really wanted to make something that was just, here's, if you don't know anything about how crafting works from zero to at least understanding the bits and pieces, or at least an overview without going into extreme detail. And we're already on a very long video. I want to make something that you can reference. If you have a friend that knows absolutely nothing about crafting, they're scared of it, they could just sit here and watch this video, and hopefully it's not too boring, and pick up enough information to get on the right foot, at least crafting, and be on the right path to get ahead with crafting. So the big thing is I am also making a spreadsheet that's going to have all of the detail in here with links to different Craft of Exile things, to the wiki with picture examples of different crafts, stuff like that. And you can reference it and share it with people. And the most important thing that I want is crafting. I played this game. I've played this game for about 5 years now, and I basically didn't craft for the first 4 years. And I think that was to my detriment. And I really, really want people to feel comfortable crafting, feel comfortable hopping into it and not being scared to spend some of that currency. Because the currency has the value on the market, people might be scared of doing it. Maybe even just make a solo self-found character, so you're forced to use that currency. If you can't get over that hump of just hey, I'm going to spend 20, 30 chaos just spamming on something and see what I get. So hopefully I encourage people to craft. I really want more and more people to craft. I think it's good for the game. It's good for the community. It's good for the market overall for having more good crafts out there, and just really, really healthy for the game overall. So yeah, if you like this video, thank you. I just sat here and talked for a number of hours, and I hope I can edit this down into something that is super digestible and nice for y'all to watch. So if you liked it, let me know, and I would appreciate any support for that. And hope to see you next time. Thank you.